Here's how to test the circuit board in your RV's furnace to see if it is your problem. It's okay if your circuit board doesn't look exactly like this. This test is gonna work pretty much no matter what type of circuit board you have. My name is Emily Kistler. I'm a certified mobile RV repair tech based in Las Vegas. This is RV Repair Woman. You got this. A couple notes before we jump into the nitty-gritty details. Getting to this circuit board can be a pain in the butt. I'm gonna make a whole separate video on how to take apart your furnace if you need to in order to get to this circuit board. If you desperately need that video, let me know in the comments and I will bump it up the queue of videos I'm making right now. If you find that you need to disconnect a propane line in order to get to this circuit board, I highly, highly recommend that you perform a time pressure drop test on your RV before you disconnect that line and then after you reconnect it. A time pressure drop test is going to tell you whether or not you have a propane leak in your entire RV, and that way you know whether or not you have a leak before you crack a line. You can then disconnect the propane line, do whatever you need to do, reconnect it, and then run that time pressure drop test again to confirm that you haven't added a leak and that you've actually reconnected everything correctly. If you need a refresher on how to do that, I have a video right here somewhere that can walk you through how to perform a time pressure drop test in your RV. Next, how are we going to test this bad boy? All of the electricity going through here is DC voltage. So the only test that we are going to need today is our DC voltage test on our meter. If you need a refresher on how to set your meter to DC volts, whether you have a more complex meter like my Klein CL800 or a more simple Harbor Freight meter like this Elenco meter that I had lying around, you can check out my multimeter basics for RV owners where I walk through how to do every test on the meter, but you can jump specifically to the point where I talk about how to set your meter to DC volts. When we are testing for DC volts on this thing, there's going to be a clip right about here, and it can be difficult to get your regular probes in there. So there's two things that you can do in order to remedy that problem. The first is you can get these super thin needle probes on Amazon. They're relatively cheap that are going to allow you to get into those tight connections. I personally don't like these probes. I've accidentally stabbed myself in the leg with one once, and now I have some PTSD. We're on bad terms. I should get over it and just get a new set of probes. But instead, what I usually do is just unscrew this circuit board from where it's mounted, turn it around, and on the back you will see these metal connections, and you'll still be able to see a little bit of those even with the clip on, and you can just test off of those if you need to. Super simple. That's usually what I do because I hate those super tiny probes, but some people love them. Either way, on to how to test your circuit board. When you are looking at your board attached to your furnace, there's really going to be three different zones on this board that we're going to be looking at. So up here in the upper left, there's going to be a 6-pin connector that's going to come in and attach, usually on the side, or sometimes it comes down on the top. It has 6 pins in the connector, but there's usually only 4 wires going in. And then over here on the bottom right, there's going to be 2 additional pins with wires going to that. And then here on the bottom left, we have our igniter. So that's it. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 wires, and one of them is the ground. So we really have like 6 things that we're going to test today. Okay, so let's walk through the story of what you're supposed to see on this board. As we remember from any voltage test, finding a good ground is very important. On these RV furnace boards, your ground is going to be the bottommost pin on that 6-pin connector. So this bottom one here is your ground, and that's what you can put your black probe on to test off of for pretty much every test that we do today. From there, the first place that we're going to look for power and the first place we're going to test is on this pin over here. On most boards it's labeled, on this one it's labeled power. So our black probe is on ground and our red probe is going to go on this pin. You should see a reading in between 10 and 14.5 volts, which we're just going to call 12 volts for the rest of the video, but just know that anything in between 10 and 14.5 is considered a-okay. Anything less than that, then the problem is not with your furnace. It is instead upstream. So I want you to go check to see if your batteries are good and charged. I want you to go check the fuses in your fuse panel. You can see my video here on how to test all of your fuses. If neither of those are your problem, then follow that wire back coming from this pin and see, does it disconnect somewhere? Where does it lead to? Where do we lose it? If you are not getting 12 volts on this pin, then the board and the furnace is not your problem. Again, your problem is upstream. The next place that we're going to check for power is the second pin down on this 6-pin connector. On my board, it is labeled TH for thermostat. This is the place where the board gets its communication from the thermostat. And we're gonna put our black probe on ground, our red probe on the thermostat pin or wire, and we should see a reading of around 12 volts. If we don't see 12 volts here, again, our problem is not with the circuit board, it is instead with the thermostat. So go check and make sure that your thermostat is actually set to heat. Make sure that the temperature on the thermostat is actually set to higher than the internal temperature of the RV. When I go to test thermostats, I usually just crank that temperature up to 90 just to make sure things are working, and then we can always back it down from there. If that doesn't solve your problem, let me know in the comments and I'll make a video walking through how to test your thermostat to make sure your thermostat is good. If you know how to test your thermostat and your thermostat is fine, then we need to start following wires and figuring out why that signal isn't making it out of the thermostat and making it to the furnace. But again, if you are not getting 12 volts on this pin, then the problem is not with the circuit board or with the furnace, the problem is upstream. So the next place that I want us to, oh my God, my hands are so dirty, excuse me. I came from a call to come film this video, and I had to clean the dirtiest AC I've ever seen. So I am just absolutely grubby. We're gonna live with it for this video. The next place that I want us to look for voltage is on the second of the 2 pins on the lower right-hand side. Mine is labeled blow for blower motor. Yes, get all of your 5th grade boy jokes in now. This is going to be what sends power from the circuit board to the fan to turn on. So if we see 12 volts there, and the fan is not turning on, then the problem is, again, not with the circuit board. It might be that you have a bad fan. If your fan is making a terrifying noise, there might be something stuck in the fan, or your fan motor may have gone bad. But that's gonna be the direction that you start looking. The circuit board is not the problem. If you are not getting 12 volts on this lower pin, that's where we get to start doing some troubleshooting, because there are 2 possibilities for why. The first place I want you to check is on the topmost pin on this 6-pin connector. On mine, it is labeled air. The air switch is what is connected to your sales switch and your high temperature limit switch. So just for now, if you are not getting 12 volts on this blower motor terminal connection, I want you to look on this first wire. This is gonna be one of the few times that you wanna see 0 volts, okay? If you are getting 0 volts on this blower motor pin and you are getting 12 volts on this first pin, on this 6-pin connector, you have a stuck closed sales switch. You can check out my whole video here on how to find your sales switch, test it, and change it out if you need to. But I'm telling you right now, if you have, again, 0 volts on this pin and 12 volts on this top pin, 9.9 out of 10 times, you have a stuck closed sales switch, and that's gonna be your problem. If you are getting 0 volts on this bottom terminal and 0 volts on this top pin, then it's most likely the circuit board that is your problem. Give it one look over, make sure there aren't any fuses that you can take out and test, which you can test using continuity on your meter, the exact same way that I show you in the fuse video. So just to review, 0 volts on the blower pin, you have 2 things that could potentially be up. And the way you're gonna figure out which is by testing this top wire. If you get 12 volts on this top wire, the most likely culprit is the sales switch. It might be your high temperature limit switch, but it's most likely the sales switch. If you have 0 volts on this pin, then the board is your problem, okay? Moving on. If we are getting 12 volts on this blow pin, then the fan should be turning on and air should be moving, okay? So the next place then that we are going to check on this board is to go to that top pin again on the 6-pin connector. I know we just tested it in the last section if the blower fan wasn't on. Now we're going to test it again if the fan is turning on. So this time we want to see 12 volts on that pin. That means that the fan is turning on and it's closing the sail switch like it's supposed to. If we are seeing 0 volts on that top pin, then the problem can be one of 3 things. Either our blower fan is not moving enough air. This is the least likely of the 3, but it is possible. Your sail switch might be your problem. That is the most likely culprit. Again, check out my how to test your sail switch video. Or it's your high temperature limit switch, which I haven't made a video on yet, but if you think that the high temperature limit switch might be your problem, let me know in the comments and I can make you a video on how to test that. If you are getting 12 volts on power, 12 volts on thermostat, 12 volts at the blower fan is turning on, and you're getting 12 volts at this top wire, then the next place that I want us to check for power is on the 4th wire down. On my board, it's labeled V1, but just know that this is the pin where the circuit board sends out power to the gas valves to open up. So again, our black probe on ground, our red probe on this V1 wire or V1 pin, and we are looking for 12 volts. If we do not see 12 volts going out on this wire, then it's most likely that the circuit board is your problem. Again, look for a fuse that you can take off. If there isn't one, then the circuit board is most likely your problem. At the same time that the gas valves are opening, we should also be hearing a ticking coming from the igniter. Editing Emily here. If you think the igniter on your circuit board is your problem, head on over to my water heater video and skip right to the section labeled igniters. Everything's parted out, so it's super easy to get to that section. And I'll talk you through there how to test the igniter on your circuit board. I just did a terrible job explaining it here. You got this. And that's it. It's that quick and easy. You can narrow things down pretty quick on furnaces if you can get to the circuit board. Honestly, getting to this board is usually harder than diagnosing what's wrong once you get there. If you found this video helpful and were able to figure out what was wrong with your furnace, please let me know down in the comments. It truly makes my day knowing that somebody felt empowered enough to figure out what was wrong with their appliances and in their house and felt like they could take ownership of the place that they lived by a video that I made, especially if you're a lady. There's just not enough of us out there poking things with a multimeter. So if I can get one more woman out there feeling confident enough to play around with one of these, then hey, I've done my job. If the sail switch was your problem, then all of this trouble could most likely have been avoided by just doing a little bit of RV maintenance. If you would like help with that, check down in my description. I have a link to my ultimate guide to RV maintenance where I walk through how to maintain your furnace, but also everything from your ACs to your water tanks. So check that out. There's a link there waiting for you. Would love for you to have that. In the meantime, this has been RV Repairwoman. You got this.